Today on Sekulow, the next impeachment battle emerges. We'll talk to Congressman Chip Roy.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
All right, welcome to Sekulow. We are taking your phone calls too, 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. As you know, there's been a move in Congress to impeach some Biden officials. I mean, there's even been moves on Biden himself. But one that we believe is most relevant and most realistic is the potential impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas at the Homeland Security Committee. And this idea that as the Secretary of Homeland Security, he has failed to implement his job, which is to secure the border, protect Americans, but also he gets up in front of Congress and says, there's no problem at the border. There's nothing to see here. There's no major numbers. So all of that we'll lay out through the show. ACLJ Action at acljaction.org is supporting these House Republicans who are putting these potential articles together. They're in the investigative stage now. Chip Roy, congressman from Texas, who's very vocal in his support of this. You can understand why. He lives and represents a border state. He's going to be joining us later in the broadcast, second half hour, to talk about how it's working through the House of Representatives, so how likely they can get it out of the House and to a much more hostile Senate. But sometimes, Dad, you know, just being able to have the trial can make a huge impact.
Well, also, Secretary Mayorkas, we got to be clear, does not have a lot of friends in the United States Senate either. There's been serious concern about his administration of our border security. There have been other concerns within the Department of Homeland Security, not limited just to the border wall. But when you look at the situation, I think in the House of Representatives, this will pass. He will be impeached. Now, in the Senate, the trial would be a whole different ballgame. But we've seen this happen before. And like I said, here's a guy that does not have a lot of support in the Senate. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think it's also fair to say is that he doesn't have a lot of support from these state law enforcement officials, not support from his own Customs and Border Patrol, immigration's ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. All of those groups have been very vocal in their opposition to how this administration and this agency led by Secretary Mayorkas has handled these surges at the border that go up and down. You remember sometimes the news gets heavy and hot on it.
Right.
Sometimes they break away. It hasn't changed. No, I saw images yesterday out of Arizona where there was a part of the wall that like, I don't know who did it, but they lifted it up. And thousands of people just started walking through into the United States. They're selling
portions of the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, as scrap metal. And then you have the situation, look, he is required by law to enforce the federal immigration statutes. That includes the phrase operational control of the U.S. border. Also includes detention and the removal of illegal aliens from the country. Now, there are 85,000 missing, are these juveniles, I guess? Kids that have crossed the border with or without parents or maybe through coyotes. They are missing. And then you talk about misleading the public. In April of 2022, Mayorkas claimed that Homeland Security had operational control of the southern border. We know that wasn't the fact at all. Mayorkas has further stated the border is secure and not open. He makes those statements while thousands are crossing. So, look, I think his tenure has been marked with controversy. The controversy is he's not qualified to do this, and he's doing a very poor job.
So, folks, we want you to support us in this effort. You go to acljaction.org. That's acljaction.org. We've got a pre-written letter I'm holding in my hands now that you can send directly. Click there, put your information in. You can also edit it, add your own information. Maybe you live in a border state and you want to share a story about what's happened to you. You can do all of that through the new tool we've launched through ACLJ Action. So go to acljaction.org today and get your letter into Congress, to your member of Congress, supporting the impeachment of Mayorkas. And, Dad, this is an important time for the ACLJ. We're just a week away from one of our big end of our ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. We need people in the fight. We'll go through all of the reasons why. There's so many different issues we're focusing on, but I want to encourage you to go to aclj.org. Be part of this Life and Liberty Drive. We've been adding clients because of your support of the ACLJ. Our legal work has expanded. We'll be right back.
Who's to blame for the floodgates being open on the southern border, Mr. Mayorkas?
Congressman, I look forward to working with you to fix what is clearly a broken immigration system. The issue of migration, the increase in migration, is not exclusive to the United States. During World War II, there were 60 million displaced people around the world. Now there are over 117.
We just had a report earlier today. Somebody said that there is no border anywhere on the globe that is more porous, if you will, than the United States border and more insecure. And it's on your watch, sir.
Has the crisis at our southern border made Americans less safe? Yes or no?
Senator, we are dedicated to the safety.
Has the crisis made Americans less safe? I don't want a discourse. It's a yes or no question.
Senator, we have a challenge of.
You refuse to answer the question. Mr. Secretary, let me show you how someone doing his job answers a question in a straightforward manner. Chief Ortiz, is the crisis that is currently ongoing at the southern border making the border less safe for Americans and aliens alike? Answer, yes. One word, one syllable, 3 letters. That's how someone answers a question and does their job. You're being a politician misleading the American people. Let me give you a chance again. Will you show the same integrity Chief Ortiz shows? Is the crisis at the southern border making Americans less safe? Yes or no?
Senator, we have 260,000.
You refuse to answer the question. Let's move on.
Every time before you come before this committee, you always say it's going to get better. Our plan is going to work at some future point. And you also usually say it's really not as bad as it looks. And then every time you leave, it gets worse and worse. This is a humanitarian crisis in Del Rio. You can spin it whichever way that you want. But you're quite right. We should not minimize the humanitarian conditions for which, frankly, you're responsible.
I've been in Congress 7 years. I think you're the most dishonest witness that has ever appeared before the Judiciary Committee. And I think I speak for a lot of my colleagues. This is such a frustrating exercise for us.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. Just another incident where Secretary Mayorkas goes before Congress. Earlier this year at a House Homeland Security Committee hearing, Mayorkas was asked about wristbands that cartels have made migrants wear as a way of tracking them like cargo as they're shipped across the U.S.-Mexico border. So you see, these people are this is human trafficking, by the way. It might not be sex trafficking all the time, but it is human trafficking so that they can track them when they cross the border. And when he was asked about it, Mayorkas said he was unaware. And that's when Congressman Mark Green of Tennessee said, I was stunned when Secretary Mayorkas confessed to the Senate that he didn't even know the cartels were using these wristbands in smuggling operations. And, of course, this just elevates the level of the human trafficking even after those immigrants have crossed the border.
Okay, do you want us to play this bite? We've got a bite. Yeah, talking about these wristbands, we actually have a bite on this. Let's go ahead and play it.
The photograph that was before, what are these wristbands?
I don't know what they are.
You don't know what they are. Mr. Secretary, you have just testified to the American people you're incompetent at your job, because I've been to the southern border, and if you go to the southern border, along the southern border, you see thousands of these wristbands because the illegal immigrants wear them. The drug cartels, every color corresponds to how many thousands of dollars they owe the cartels. You have turned these cartels into multi-billion-dollar criminal organizations, and these are modern-day leg irons because these are children being sold into sex slavery, and you don't even know what they are. That is astonishing.
He should be impeached just for that. So there is a technique that the cartels use when bringing kids, mostly, into the United States, where these color-coded wristbands that show you owe $3,000, $4,800, and you sell yourself, and it's usually into sex trade to pay back the cartels. And they hold it over your family's head back in Mexico or wherever the country of origin is. Here's the problem. The Secretary of Homeland Security didn't even know what they represent. And this is running a plague on the American people.
And you mentioned it. I mean, the fact that 85,000 migrant children have gone lost. They are now lost over just the past 2 years. Senator Marsha Blackburn in Tennessee and Senator Josh Hawley in Missouri, good friends of ours, reported this news and said that the services have been unable to contact thousands of unaccompanied minors who were placed with sponsors. And we know those sponsors can be no good. Some of those people are good faith actors, but a lot of these sponsors, then put these kids right into the sex trafficking and human trafficking world that they can't contact. I mean, the United States government has lost 85,000 kids. That's 85,000
Think about
daughters and sons that have been lost to criminal activity.
Yeah, and that criminal activity is mostly sex trafficking or drugs.
Especially when we're talking about kids.
So here's the situation. I think this is an opportunity for the United States Congress to actually take some action. And I don't think you're going to see an impeachment of Joe Biden. Realistically, we're going to be letting Jordan in 3 months. We're less than a year away from election. Could they do it? They could. But this one, he doesn't have a lot of fans in the United States Senate, even among the Democrats. Nobody thinks Mayorkas is doing a good job or a credible job. He doesn't even know the facts on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big debate right now, we'll talk about with Chip Roy in the second half hour of the broadcast, is that I think the support's there in the House. What they're trying to weigh is it going to be politically, is this going to help the issue? Or is it going to damage because people sometimes react negatively to impeachment? They actually sometimes backfire.
We're getting, I just noticed that on our social media feeds, we're starting to get a lot of people tracking in here. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Rumble, or Twitter, I guess now as well, we encourage you to share this with, first of all, subscribe and like the feed, but also share this with your friends. We're giving you an analysis that you're not really going to get anyplace else because we've done litigation on the border issues, and these are serious. The thing that has me most concerned is when you have a Homeland Security Secretary that doesn't understand what these cartels are doing. It's what Senator Cruz said. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's not getting less impactful. It's getting more impactful. And what they're doing is getting more sophisticated, not less sophisticated. And then we're selling. I mean, this is what's outrageous. We're selling parts of the fence, the border wall, for scrap metal. Have we lost our mind? We're taking your calls at 1-800-684-3110. Let's go ahead and take a phone call if we can. Yeah. Not yet. Okay, it says not yet.
Yeah, so again, comments coming in. I wanted to play. So, Will, this is the first time when he admitted to having operational control. Then he admitted later he did not have operational control. So let's go to first. This is when we believe one of the first times Mayorkas misled, if you want to use the word lied, to Congress by 4.
So would you say, having been asked this over and over again, that the United States, the President of the United States, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and all of the hardworking men and women at the border have operational control or have a form of presence, that they are aware of what's going on in the border and that they're working to secure the border every single day?
As we define that term, Congresswoman, we do.
Yeah, so the question is going to be, and I'm looking at this politically, it's an interesting report in Politico. They say Secretary Mayorkas is regarded by Republicans as the most likely and easiest target for impeachment because of his activities. But they worry that centrist Republicans are hesitant to embrace impeachment or even accept that Mayorkas lied to lawmakers during the congressional hearings. Now, that's a question of whether that's in the House of Representatives or in the United States Senate. Jordan, discuss it politically.
Well, I mean, the House obviously is much more conservative, but the majority is very slim. You can't lose a lot of Republicans. 5. I mean, impeachment just takes a majority. It doesn't take a supermajority to impeach. So it's different than being after the trial being found guilty or acquitted. That's a 2/3 number. So here, what we're looking at is, we'll talk to Chip Roy about it.
He says He says right now it's close, but the votes are not quite there yet.
I think that goes to, it's not that people like Mayorkas, even moderate Republicans, I think, again, who represent a lot of these states that are closer on the border. It's the political calculation. And folks, think about many times when you move forward these impeachments, they backfire. I think this has gotten to the level. I mean, this is not like we're trying to impeach a president. This is a cabinet secretary who is totally incapable and refuses not only to do their job, but to carry out the laws on the books of the United States. I can't think of anything more impeachable than that. You failed at your job, and you don't follow the law. That not following the law and what mandates him to do, that's a high crime and misdemeanor.
It sure is. Let's take a phone call, and we're taking your calls at 1-800-684-3110. That's 800-684-3110. Let's go to the phones. Joe, you're on the air.
Thank you for taking my question.
Sure.
And I appreciate everything you guys do, as always.
Thank you.
If Mayorkas could or would be impeached, Who chooses his replacement, and could it lead to the imprisonment if he's found impeachable?
No, impeachment is not a crime. It's a removal from office, so you don't go to jail for being impeached. His replacement it's a part of the executive branch of government under Article 2. Thus, the president, that'd be President Biden, would pick his replacement. So it's not where Congress picks the replacement or the impeachment body picks the replacement. The replacement is picked by the president. That's what Article 2 says. The issue here is, do you just let it go that he's been so inept? And I think that we played earlier that sound about the wristbands and not understanding the cartels did this they do this for a particular reason is so outrageous that he didn't know that basic fact.
That's outrageous. I mean, he's not informed before a committee. He knows these committees are going to be hostile too. So get informed. Understand. I mean, you should have the basic understanding of how you're trying to, of what's going on in the cartel use and the problems with all these children. But we saw the play down even after the movie. Oh, human trafficking is not that big of a deal. Sex trafficking is not that big of a deal. I mean, it's just gotten absurd. I want to just read out these numbers for you, just briefly. We put together just kind of like the total encounters at the border. There were 183,000 encounters along the southern border in July. That's an increase from 144,000 in June. I mean, right there, you're talking over 250,000 people. That's almost 300,000 people. In July, the number of those entering illegally between ports of entry also increased from 99,000 encounters in June to more than 132,000 in July. They've acted, Dad, like this border crisis is no longer. You add these numbers up. This is the sound of a mid-level city. This sounds like Nashville, Tennessee.
Well, I mean, but
coming across in a month.
But what's happening here is they're not doing anything. There's no preventative activity to stop this. They're not doing anything proactively. I mean, when you ask your son, we'll talk to Chip Roy about this. I mean, he's obviously a congressman from a border state, but goodness, every state's a border state these days. They're doing nothing proactively. But talking about proactively, we are. We're just over a week away from the end of our ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive, and we urgently need you in the fight. We are focusing today on our email and our fight for religious liberty and life, but also means defending those of our ally, Israel. Israel's enduring repeated attacks, as you know. They are traumatized almost at these international tribunals. We're there fighting back. Biden is sending billions to Iran, but is being very, very negative as it relates to our relationship with the state of Israel. Today we're filing at the United Nations more legal briefs on this issue. Help us defend Israel's interests. Have your gift doubled right now through our Life and Liberty Drive. Part of liberty is to defend our allies that help us defend liberty, and a stable Middle East is that. aclj.org for the Life and Liberty Drive. Your gifts will be doubled.
ACLJ has a long and distinguished history in fighting for liberty.
At the ACLJ, this is our number one issue. It's why we're founded.
It started with Jews for Jesus and their ability to engage in evangelism. Then it became whether students in high school could start Bible studies and Christian fellowship organizations and events like See You at the Pole. That kind of set us up as the religious liberty team.
Conservative groups were targeted by the IRS.
Remember when we went after the IRS? We broke them after 3 years of pulverizing them in court.
The Party of Tolerance just viciously attacked two peaceful pro-life advocates.
Not of a pedestrian who attacked him, but a pro-abortion extremist.
A former U.S. Navy chief and part-time employee who was forced to resign his position because he wouldn't remove bumper stickers from his personal vehicle that were supportive of President Trump. We will be representing FBI Special Agent Garrett O'Boyle. He was the FBI agent who blew the whistle on the FBI targeting conservatives. And what did the FBI do to him? Suspended him without pay.
Put this guy and his family in a homeless situation.
They were thrown out for wearing hats that had a pro-life message on them.
Legal action is imminent. We've already put them on notice.
We represent the parents and a 15-year-old female student who was forced to perform a profanity-laced, sexually explicit, obscene monologue as a graded assignment.
If you don't want me to read it to you, what was that like for my 15-year-old daughter?
The responsibility of the ACLJ is to make Americans aware of attacks on our freedom. We fight for the liberties and freedoms that make this country great. Join us in our Life and Liberty Drive to stand with us in the fight. All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your phone calls to 1-800-684-3110. Remember, in the next half hour of the broadcast, Congressman Chip Roy of Texas is going to be joining us. He's leading the efforts on this impeachment effort of Mayorkas, so it's going to be great to have him on the broadcast. We want to continue to take your calls to 1-800-684-3110. There's also a debate tonight we're going to talk about later in the broadcast, but if you have questions and calls about that too, get them in at 1-800-684-3110. Let's go to Mike in Michigan on line 1. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how you doing today? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. You're on the air.
Thank you. My question would be, I'm a former Democrat that's completely frustrated with the way everything's going, this Mayorkas issue and everything else. What can an ordinary citizen do to get involved and help change this? I've done everything I can think I can do, but what else can I do?
Listen, we set up ACLJ Action to deal with these kind of issues exactly, and through ACLJ Action, you could join with us in taking direct action on this particular topic. And Jordan, why don't we? And Mike will encourage you to go to the website, but Jordan, tell people what they need to do here.
Yeah, I think, again, what you can do here is you go to acljaction.org. Will you pull the latest number, Will? The latest number. Okay, we just launched this morning. I got my email when I woke up, and 9,578 of you have already signed the letter to your member of Congress, or as it goes specific, because all you have to do is put in your address. It goes to the right member of Congress. We have it pre-written for you, but we encourage you. You can delete this whole thing and write your own. You can use parts of it, but maybe you've got a personal story you want to share, like if you're in a border state, and it clicks and it goes right to your member of Congress so they know that you support the impeachment. That's what it's going to take to get to that next level, is the congressmen and women knowing that their grassroots base supporters do, in fact, support taking this drastic measure. Impeachment is a drastic measure, and we've got to let them know that you do. So you go to acljaction.org, and again, we're going to have over 10,000 by today. Share that with your friends and family. It does not cost anything to sign this petition, and I think this is one where we can have tremendous impact, because members of Congress really need to know, Dad, that the base, their supporters, the grassroots activists, do want this impeachment to move forward, that they aren't afraid of moving forward to impeach Mayorkas. And that's how they learn when they're back in their offices about what their constituents think. We've got the ACLJ Action behind it. That's big, but we want you to stand with us. And again,
we're also taking action here and we're taking this to push the issue of the impeachment of Mayorkas, because congressional Republicans also need to understand that the American people are frustrated about this and want to hold the Biden administration accountable. So when the calls come in about what we can do, this is direct action you can take to help move this forward. So again, ACLJ Action is a way to do that, and the website's up on the screen there at acljaction.org. We're taking your calls, 1-800-684-3110, 800-684-3110. Whitney's calling from Texas on line 2. Whitney, welcome to the broadcast. You're on the air.
Thanks so much. Sure. I do contribute to ACLJ Action and would definitely encourage people to do the same. Great. It's not tax deductible, but it's your dollars at work. It's your dollars feet on the ground. Go ahead and do it. I'm calling from Texas. When I hear the sound bites of Senator Cruz, he's keeping a lid on it, but boy, can you hear the outrage in his voice. And in this way, he represents his constituents very well, because we have had it. We are outraged by what's happening at the border. And in terms of Mayorkas, I think he'd rather be seen as being ignorant, because that's the gateway for his action, than to be seen as complicit. And that's really the only. I was just asking
this thing. How does he not know what that is?
Because they don't care about illegal immigration, so they're not tracking it that way. They want a flood of these immigrants here. They think that they can politically then win them over and say, we are the Democrat Party that opened those borders back up so that you can come to America and ultimately then be on some pathway to citizenship. That they think, this is how long-term the Democrats are thinking here, that ultimately when they become citizens, they will feel like they owe the Democratic Party for their American citizenship, and thus, and also their families that are already here, for those who are coming to meet up with those families, will stay solidly Democrat, even though the vast majority of the Hispanic community lines up much more with the Republican conservative values. So what I do think the reason why he doesn't know, Dad, is they don't care. They just don't care. That's part of the impeachment. He doesn't care about actually being the enforcer. He's a law enforcement official. He's not a humanitarian actor.
I don't understand, though, when you're prepared to give testimony, which is like arguing a case, how do you not know the answers to these questions? Or what you're saying is they know the answer to the questions, and they're just not saying, or they don't care. Because their narrative is let them all come in. Do you see what's going on in New York right now? 71% of the people polled in New York said the people that are coming to New York have overrun the city, that they cannot keep up with the services. They can't keep up with the health services, the education services. And the concern is, and I think this is a serious concern, is when you have New York, which was going to be an asylum-friendly city, saying it's not working, what does that tell you as to what's really going on here?
I think what it tells you is there's been a complete failure at the top, and that even when you've got liberal mayors who've kind of thrown their hands up in the air, whether it's San Francisco, smaller border towns along Texas, but the fact is, and Dad, we know this, you can see it here, it's impacting every single state and community across the country because these cartels, they use the roadways, they use the highways to human traffic, drug traffic. I mean, it is the impact they've had. And we know this. I don't want to speak directly to this. It's one of the things I think Mayorkas, they brought up that should be impeached for, is the amount of Americans who have died because of the fentanyl that has come across that southern border.
That's enough right there for his impeachment, in my view.
And to say, well, he's played this political move that let's get all these Hispanics here and they'll eventually vote Democrat, instead of we've got to stop fentanyl because it is killing hundreds of thousands of American people and destroying lives and destroying families. And it is the cartels who are responsible for distributing it. The Chinese make it. They get it to the cartels. But it is the U.S. government's job to seize it. Right. Once it's out on the streets, thousands of more people die.
It's that simple. All right, we're going to take more of your calls when we come back from the break at 1-800-684-3110. In fact, let's go ahead and take Todd's call here quickly. Todd, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hey, thanks, gentlemen. My question is about the money that's being given to illegal aliens. I understand it's around $2,200 a month, including a smartphone. How is the government able to rob us and give our money away to illegal aliens?
$200 a month goes to in aid goes to refugees, people that are classified as refugees, not to undocumented immigrants that are crossing or illegal aliens crossing. Yep. So that's to people that have recognized refugee status.
This has made it much more difficult for real refugees because everybody's putting that down.
Yes, that is the problem.
And then you have to have all this. We've done it before. Before you apply for that, you're supposed to have a significant amount of evidence that you can bring, whether it's voicemails, threatening letters you've received, newspaper articles about the threats they may have made against you. And it has to be your life. You're in danger. Not just, I don't like living here because of the economic situation. Your life has to be in imminent danger to get that refugee status to jump the line. But now everyone is applying for that, and this administration has kind of loosened what an emergency is. And I think they do now consider the economic issue as actually a reason to become a refugee.
If you're watching on any of our social media applications or platforms, go ahead and share this with your friends right now so we get more people involved. We're also just a week away from the end of our ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive, and we urgently need you in the fight. Today we're focusing on our fight for Israel, our ally. Excuse me. Billions of dollars go to Iran. Meanwhile, this administration has done nothing but attack Israel's positions. We want to support Israel. Your support makes that difference. Go to aclj.org and support our Life and Liberty Drive. Any amount you donate is doubled.
In 2021, 2 Yemeni nationals on the FBI terror watch list were caught by U.S. Border Patrol agents. This was a heroic moment. Deep state officials silenced the heroism of our border agents who put their lives on the line to keep us safe. The White House doesn't want you to know they've lost all control of the border. If it wasn't for the work of the ACLJ filing a Freedom of Information Act request, you would never have known how close terrorists came to disappearing into the shadows of our city streets. We were able to do this all thanks to you. Keep us in the fight. To learn more, Go to aclj.org/coverup.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your phone calls to 1-800-684-3110. We've got Congressman Chip Roy will be joining us in the next segment of the broadcast. Of course, he represents Texas, a border state, but he's also been leading the charge, whether it's inside committee hearings or pushing for the, again, impeachment move against Mayorkas. It's not just to impeach for impeachment's sake here either. As we've outlined, the number of people being human trafficked, the drugs that are coming across, they're killing Americans. They're not killing the illegal immigrants. They're killing the Americans. These are drugs manufactured in China, fentanyl, and then they bring them to the cartels. The cartels use a lot of these humans to then traffic them into the country, and then Americans die. I mean, it is an epidemic. The drug epidemic is real in our country, and it literally touches from the poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich. How many times do you hear those stories of people just not waking up because they thought they were taking one thing and it was fentanyl? And again, so all of that blame can be laid at Mayorkas, at least a lot of it, because most of it's not coming from the northern border. It's this idea that they're making a play to Hispanics, like we're going to get their vote because we let them in.
The American Hispanic community doesn't want this either.
No, it makes it tougher for their families who are legitimately on track to be here and reunite, push back in the line. And so those families who are already in the U.S., either legally or maybe already citizens, who have family who have gone through the regular process, which is backed up, they just get pushed down. So the people following the law to immigrate here get pushed to the bottom of the line because we've allowed so many illegal immigrants to enter the country.
You know, when you
it doesn't have to be this way.
No, but when you see the New York City, which has been an asylum-friendly state or a refugee-friendly state, San Francisco, saying we can't handle this, the number of people coming in is just so overwhelming. We can't do this. This is not something we can handle in the scope of our existing public services that we have available. We just can't do this. And you ask yourself this question: if that's New York and San Francisco, what's the rest of the country thinking? By the way, in New York, it was 70%, Jordan. 70% said we can't do this anymore. It's affecting New York City drastically.
Yeah, I mean, they're running out of space to house people. I mean, they've had to kick people out of different homes to use. They're using apartment buildings. They're also having to use very expensive hotels. So it's costing the taxpayers in places like Manhattan a lot of money. And of course, it's ruining some smaller towns across Texas. I'm going to ask Chip Roy about that. I mean, it's the hospitals are overridden.
Right.
So if you've got a legitimate problem, but all these people who made this treacherous journey, they don't have insurance, so they're not going to a doctor's office even for small things. They're showing up in emergency rooms. They have to take care of people. That's the doctor's duty. But then for people who are having an actual heart attack and they are American citizens, again, they try to get to their hospital and it's overrun to the point where some are deciding to close. This all traces back to the fact that we have a porous southern border. All these issues we're talking about right here.
Right.
We haven't even talked about the terrorism. The number of terrorists who have been caught trying to cross this border.
We have a whole video, I think it's been viewed by almost 80,000 people, that talks about that very issue. I mean, it in dramatic terms. And we, by the way, found that out through our Freedom of Information Act litigation with the Department of Homeland Security when they pulled down that they had captured 2 people on the terror watch list. And the FBI and DOJ and State Department made them take it down, made the Customs and Border Patrol take down their success in capturing the terrorists. Why? Because they don't want the American people to know that terrorists are coming in through that southern border. It's that clear. And we were able to get that and get that information out. So when you're supporting the work of the ACLJ, you're letting us hold our government accountable. We're doing that with ACLJ Action right now. We did it with ACLJ in federal court. Together, we can make a huge impact.
By launching ACLJ Action, because of your support, we are able to work even that much closer with Congress on this issue of the impeachment, what it should entail, what it should not entail, and work with them. And so we're able to plan and strategize on all of that. We're going to have Chip Roy coming up next on the broadcast. I want to ask him, and because one issue we're not talking about, it's with Mayorkas, is not just the border. Remember the disinformation board?
Yep.
And they said they did disband it, but they're still going to do it and all that. That's Mayorkas, too, who wanted to violate your First Amendment rights by pressuring social media companies. So it's not just the border. There's a lot more to impeach Mayorkas over. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, this is Jordan Sekulow. You've spoken and we've heard you loud and clear. That's why this month we're doing something big.
We're proud to announce our brand new ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. Our legal teams will be focusing on the issues that you've told us matter the most to you.
We're redoubling our efforts to beat back the radical left's attack on your constitutional religious freedoms and to defend the sanctity of human life. Life and liberty are the cornerstones of our great nation, but they're not guaranteed. When the values we hold dear are under attack, it's up to all of us to take a stand or risk losing them forever. This is not just a call to fund our legal battles. This is your moment to get in the fight.
Every tax-deductible gift will be doubled. Go to aclj.org right now and join us in the fight.
Throughout the month of August, our legal teams will be focusing on the issues that you, our ACLJ members, have told us matter most to you.
We know the issues that matter to you, and this one touches on both government oversight, government corruption, and the life issue.
The ACLJ is representing FBI whistleblower Garrett O'Boyle. We also plan on representing other whistleblowers who have come to Congress who are now under assault by the weaponized Department of Justice and FBI.
This is a guy that was doing his job, investigating cases, and made a whistleblower report under the existing whistleblower guidelines.
Because of you and your financial support of the ACLJ, we could represent them. I mean, they've got nothing. They've had everything. They've lost everything. So to get good legal representation, where can they go? They can go to the ACLJ because you donate to the ACLJ to make sure they can get good legal representation. You're the reason why we get to, these whistleblowers can continue to come forward. There will be more that we represent. This is just the first that we're announcing.
Defend freedom. Join us in this fight for life and liberty and stand up for this FBI agent and his family. aclj.org.
Secular, as you know, as we've announced today, the ACLJ Action, our 501c4, is supporting the move by members of Congress to move forward with impeaching Secretary Mayorkas because of his failures to secure the southern border, the disinformation campaign, the list goes on and on. And we wanted to bring in Congressman Chip Roy, who's also leading those efforts. He represents the 21st District of Texas, but he is a national leader when it comes to these issues. And Congressman, it's great to have you on and join us. Let me ask you just first about this. Your Republican colleagues who have been dealing with trying to ask Mayorkas questions, whether it is the horrors that come out of a porous southern border or the disinformation campaign, how tough has it been to convince fellow Republicans to take this action?
Well, great to be on. Look, I mean, I've been pretty clear for the last 2 years that I think that I think that the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, that the case has been made, right? I'm very clear in laying out the case that he has violated his oath to the Constitution, that he is failing to carry out his duty to faithfully execute the laws of the United States. He lied to us under oath. It's crystal clear. Unfortunately, a handful of my colleagues on House Judiciary and generally on the floor in the House have some concerns that it doesn't rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. I disagree. They believe it's maladministration. I think this is well beyond maladministration, that this is a dereliction of duty. It is a breach of the public trust. And in fact, as I said, he has lied to us under oath. So he should be removed from office. If our guys can't find the fortitude to impeach him, then we ought to force his removal via the funding process.
Congressman, this is Jay Sekiel. You know, we filed litigation against the Department of Homeland Security to find out why they required the Customs and Border Patrol to remove a announcement that they had caught and apprehended two individuals on the Yemeni individuals on the terror watch list. And we got all the back and forth. Basically, they were saying, hey, DOJ doesn't like this. This is not, the kind of positioning we want. They didn't want the American people to know what's really going on down there. And then you take the drug cartel situation and the wristband question that Ted Cruz asked your colleague in the Senate, and Mayorkas has no idea. It almost seems like the illegal access to the United States is just not an item they care about.
Well, I think they view this as purely through a political lens and not through a human lens or through the lens of sovereignty, which they just don't even agree with. They gave up the joke a long time ago when they said they were in favor of a new, liberal world order. They don't believe in boundaries. They don't believe that our sovereignty matters. And they're all too happy to allow utter devastation for little girls getting sold into the sex trafficking trade, put in stash houses, being held for ransom. The kind of horrors we saw depicted in the movie The Sound of Freedom. They're all too happy to have migrants dying at large numbers along the Rio Grande and in South Texas, 856 last year alone, finding ranchers, finding bodies on their ranches, finding them dead in the Rio Grande. The 53 human beings who were cooked in a tractor trailer in San Antonio in the Texas heat just over a year ago. Those are the kinds of things that my Democratic colleagues are perfectly content allowing to continue. It is a war on children, right? They don't care that children are dying. They don't care that children are getting abused and sold into the sex trafficking trade. And they're all too happy to perpetuate it for their political expediency. I do not believe that House Republicans should fund a Department of Homeland Security that is war with not just the people of Texas, but with the entire country and undermining the safety and security of our people dying from fentanyl poisonings and migrants who are seeking to come here.
Congressman Roy, one of the other issues that it's not, and again, every family who's been touched by the fentanyl crisis, I mean, I think that alone, to me, Secretary Mayorkas could be impeached over, because we know that there are drugs coming across that border that target and kill Americans, and we've heard the stories. I mean, it's hard to talk to anybody in the country. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or middle class that hasn't been affected or had a family member killed because of fentanyl.
I've had 6 children who have died in the independent school district in which I reside, southwest of Austin, Texas. It is affecting real lives. It is affecting moms who are having to start organizations trying to increase fentanyl awareness. The amount of fentanyl pouring into our communities is extraordinary. Travis County, Austin, Texas, last year had I can't remember the numbers right in front of me, but such an extraordinarily high level of deaths by fentanyl that it was off the charts relative to the country. Now it's affecting everybody, but we're getting pounded in Texas because all of this stuff that's pouring in is sticking. And it's sticking as it then flows through into the rest of the nation. That's my point, and why we did a letter with 14 of my Texas House colleagues joined me in saying, look, no security, no funding. And, the other side wants to say, oh, you want to shut down the government. Look, I'm not looking to shut down the government, but what I am looking to do is force them to do their job using the power of the purse. That's my job, and so we're going to keep our foot on the gas.
I want to play this sound because from you asking Mayorkas a question, this is back in April, Congressman Roy asking Mayorkas about operational control. Take a listen, Bite 39.
Will you testify under oath right now? Do we have operational control, yes or no?
Yes, we do.
We have operational control of the borders.
Yes, we do.
And then when he was asked a few months later, July 25th, at an oversight hearing, he totally walked it back, Congressman Roy. Take a listen. This is again Mayorkas under oath, Bite 41.
The Secure Fence Act, specifically the statute, defines operational control as not having one individual cross the border illegally. Under that statutory definition, no administration has achieved operational control.
I mean, Congressman Roy, when he told you he had operational control, he's just defining, I guess, what that means for himself?
So what I found fascinating is when we had him in front of the House Judiciary Committee in July, I posed these questions to him again and forced him again to say, well, you said this. And he kind of smirked and was saying, well, yeah, I said that. But then he tried to do the same thing and hide behind, quote, well, I wasn't referring to that specific statute with respect to the Secure Fence Act, which has the language that says any flow of narcotics or any flow of humans means you don't have operational control. And so I said, hold on there, Mr. Secretary. And I went back and I went to the transcripts. And I brought the same charts that I had used 15 months earlier. And I held the charts up. I said, I literally held this chart up. And you said, yes, when I asked if we have operational control based on the definition I was holding up. He had no response to that. He tried to go hide and obfuscate. The fact is, he knows they've been trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the American people. Fortunately, because of some good reporting, like by Bill Malugin and by some of us pushing it, The American people know. But I'm tired of that, and Republicans have got to do our job to hold them accountable.
Congressman, what is it going to take for your colleagues, I'm talking about your Republican colleagues, to take action here, to see an impeachment of someone who is failing so drastically at protecting the United States and who has a narrative, and it's, of course, run by the administration, that just doesn't want to deal with the reality of what's going on here?
Honestly, I think it's going to take pressure. It's going to take pressure from the American people and pressure from some of us in Congress to turn up the heat. Our guys are just too fast to come up with excuses. I had a phone call yesterday with some of my colleagues. My staff was on a call with some other staff this morning, and it's all the usual stuff. But, Chip, we don't have the Senate. Chip, we passed H.R. 2 in the spring, but the Senate won't vote for it. Well, they won't vote for it because you people roll right over. You let them just run over you. Impeach the guy. He lied to you. Defund them until they change gears. That doesn't mean you shut down the Department of Homeland Security in perpetuity. It means you hold them accountable to do their job and don't give them a dollar to continue to allow our children to die from fentanyl, to allow migrants to get abused. I mean, seriously, I can't, as a Christian, we talk about being a Christian nation. How can we let this happen? While you and I are talking, there's a little girl in a stash house here in America getting ready to get sold into the sex trafficking trade, being held for ransom. While we're talking right now, we have to end that.
Through ACLJ action, just this morning, we've had over 10,000, now it's 10,694 individual letters that have been sent into Congress and your colleagues, Congressman Roy, letting them know. That's just today. We just launched it, letting them know to support this impeachment move. So, Congressman Roy, we appreciate you so much taking the time to join us today on the broadcast and leading this effort to hold the administration accountable. It's killing Americans, it's destroying cities, and it's time for Mayorkas to go. Thank you, Congressman Roy.
We appreciate having you on. Folks, as we get ready to take a break, we've got more coming up. We're talking about some other issues, including some of the work internationally. You've got an email today on our work in defense of Israel, and you know how aggressive we've been in defending Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. Well, that's under attack now more than ever at the United Nations, and we're there. We meet the challenge where that challenge is, and that's where the challenge is. I want to encourage you to go to aclj.org right now and join our Life and Liberty Drive, which means any amount you donate will be doubled. So if you donate $50, someone else is going to double that. So this is really important. These governments need our help. The people of Israel need our help, and they need us, and we need you, so that we together can get them the help they need. So let me encourage you to go to aclj.org.
Yeah, it's aclj.org. Be part of the Life and Liberty Drive. Just think about the issues we are involved in at the ACLJ every single day, impact we're making in Washington and around the world. Donate today. The ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive.
I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born.
If you look back at the whole history of the abortion movement, it is tied in with Margaret Sanger, grounded in the perception that certain people are either unfit to live or they are unworthy of life.
Life has always been a top issue since our founding. Either the unborn child is a human being or they're not. The science clearly establishes that unborn child is a person.
When you're fighting for life, when you're fighting for the life of the unborn, you're on the right side of history, you're on the right side of law.
The radical left has been relentless in trying to silence anyone who refuses to worship at the altar of abortion.
We're going to have to flood the coffers of abortion funds.
We are not going back. Not ever.
You have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
Roe v. Wade has been overturned, and the question of abortion has been returned to the states.
We celebrated this historic victory at the Supreme Court, but now it's time to put the hammer down and dig even deeper.
This is a fight that is worth fighting for, and it's an issue that is, in our mind, not negotiable. You don't negotiate on life.
We have to step up for the unborn. We've been given this unique opportunity. The battle has really just begun. This is your moment to get in the fight. Every tax-deductible gift will be doubled. Join the ACLJ in the fight to keep America free.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your calls too at 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. There's also a lot of international news right now. If you've been listening to the Sekulow Brothers podcast, we've been talking about this, the Durban conference and the BRIC leaders coming together at that conference to try and implement a new global currency to try to get away from the U.S. dollar, which, again, would seriously damage our standing in the world as the world's power and as really the most trustworthy financial system. That's at least what they like to do. We also have a new UN filing, so we get a little international here, defending Israel.
Let's start with the BRICS conversation. Yeah. I want to go to Harry. So this idea of not utilizing the U.S. dollar as the world currency standard, what does that do to the United States?
Well, this move is called a de-dollarization agenda. And basically, if China can replace, or the Chinese currency can replace the dollar, then more and more economic power will flow to China. Now, if you combine China with Russia, Russia is one of the largest grain suppliers in the world, then increasingly so-called third world countries will look to Russia and China for leadership. That's already occurring in Africa. So if you look at Niger, in Central Africa, Mali, Burkina Faso, all of those countries are basically trying to overthrow so-called Western colonialism. Implicitly, they're also trying to disempower the United States dollar. And so more and more transactions will occur either in a new currency that the BRICS create or in the Chinese yuan. And I think ultimately Western influence is going to sharply decline. Yep. And a lot of these issues are self-inflicted. So, for instance, we have a proxy war with Russia in Ukraine. Based on some recent analysis that I've looked at, Russia is actually winning that war, in part because, for instance, a lot of the things that we are doing in Ukraine, they will have a benefit to the Ukrainians, but it may be too late. So, for instance, the F-16s, the pilots will not actually be in the air until 2024.
I find it fascinating, though, that when we talk about putting the Chinese currency as the world-leading currency, and CC, I think about the fact that we still have a case involving an individual imprisoned in China because of his faith.
Yeah, China's human rights violations are extreme and rampant. And the fact that they get a spot on the world stage for anything, let alone even finance, is ridiculous to me, because they just, especially in the area of human rights, they are the top violator.
I don't understand who makes the call in this BRIC conference? What actually happens here, Harry? How does this come out?
Well, essentially, the main players are Russia and China and India. India is growing economically. China is slowing down a bit. And Russia obviously is expending a significant amount of resources on the war in Ukraine. At the same time, however, the West is inflicting wounds upon itself, including climate change, economic stagnation, lack of population growth. I think many analysts are beginning to believe that within the next 5 to 10 years, the European community will indeed fracture. Why? In part because of all of the immigrants that are flooding into the European community. That is also happening in the United States. And so there's a huge economic price that we have to pay for all of this. And so, for instance, illegal immigrants who come to the United States, they often receive up to $2,200 per month, whereas a Social Security recipient in the United States who has poured money into the Social Security system for 30 or 40 years, on average, they're getting $1,400 a month. So there's a economic imbalance that's going on in the West, and that is leading ultimately to a fracture, at least in my estimation.
So our European Center for Law and Justice is a recognized NGO, non-governmental organization with the United Nations, and that gives us standing to participate in UN General Assembly debates. I mean, Cece's done them, Jordan's done them, I've done them. They're significant. I'm holding in my hand right now for a radio audience 5 country reports that we have just submitted. They're up on the screen for our audience. Cece, let's talk about these reports because these are written submissions by our European Center for Law and Justice, the recognized NGO with the UN, on various countries. And what are we putting forward in this?
Sure. So this is the 54th session at the Human Rights Council. They have 3 sessions a year. This is their 54th. Each session, we get to make 5 written submissions on countries, highlighting really their human rights violations. However, in this one, we did Israel, India, Myanmar, Pakistan, and Ethiopia. But I want to highlight that in Israel, we did not go after them for human rights violations. We actually commended them for their stellar human rights record. So Israel, as we have discussed before, about a third of the special sessions and resolutions that come out of the United Nations are condemning and going after Israel. This is an opportunity where we have to stand up for them.
Let me say this, okay, because doesn't sound like a lot if you're just reading it in a sentence. But this is a very bold statement, and Jordan can testify to this too, to make it the United Nations. This is in our written submission, folks. This is what we said to the UN. We commend Israel for upholding the rule of law both domestically and its intention and its internal affairs as well. We also say we commend Israel for its efforts to uplift its Arab population despite being falsely condemned for it. There is no other country in the region that has the human rights record of Israel, and yet they are the most condemned.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the truth. It may be a radical statement to make it the UN, and it certainly is, to our whole team knows that, but it's factually accurate. It's the only country in that region of the world that has true religious freedom, open and fair political elections, a system of law and justice and court system. Prime ministers come and go, different political parties come and go, without conflict. There's no king, there's no queen. It is full-on democracy, and they've actually continued to expand the roles of non-Jewish Israelis to serve in the military, to serve in government as well, at the highest levels, including Muslim Israelis.
So we've launched, as you know, our Life and Liberty campaign, our drive, and we are focusing today on Israel. And because we're just 1 week from the end of this campaign, fighting for Israel and religious liberty also means defending those of our allies, and Israel has religious liberty in its country. Israel's enduring repeated attacks from terrorist rockets, enemies within the United Nations, as we were just talking about, and Cece, quickly, that is unrelenting.
Absolutely. A third, again, of these special sessions and resolutions are against Israel. We support them.
And at the same time, President Biden is using our taxpayer dollars to subsidize the Palestinian Authority, which rewards terrorists for killing Israelis and Americans, and sends billions of dollars to Iran, which end up going also to terrorists. We're going back to federal court to defeat these bogus lawsuits that have been filed against Israel, calling it an apartheid state. That's at the federal courts. We're in there fighting. And today we're filing, as we said, at the United Nations. Help us defend Israel's interests. To do that, have your gift doubled right now through our Life and Liberty drive to defend Israel against these malicious attacks. That's the ACLJ's Life and Liberty drive. Keep it up on the screen for people, and we encourage you to go there today.